Hey, good afternoon. How's everybody doing? Wasn't that fantastic, the presentation Bert made? And before that, we had that inspirational story from Roman about the Dalai Lama. Anybody remember Caddyshack? He caddied for him, right? Long hitter. So I want to talk about something that's really important, though that might be somewhat trivial against the broader life context that Bert talked about. And I'm going to talk about how, as retailers, we need to balance two things. We need to balance the trust and confidence that consumers place in us by allowing us to utilize their information that we acquire through our interactions with them and through perusing the digital breadcrumbs that they leave all over the digital universe. And then I want to talk about how we can use that to create relevancy and relationships and reciprocity in our relationships with those consumers who share personal data with us. And it's a balancing act. So I'm going to review some data. The middle name of my company is Data, International Data Corporation, so we're going to talk about some data. But that's just this frame of context. What I want to do then is tell you and give you some guidance around a couple key things, which is managing risks with your customers on how they perceive you and how they perceive your dealing with their privacy and relevancy. So let me just continue by describing my company, IDC Retail Insights. We are a business unit of IDC. IDC is the world's largest and oldest information technology advisory and research firm. We were founded 50 years ago, just this past fall. And IDC a couple years ago, or about 10 years ago, oops, what did I do? Spun up IDG, the International Data Group, and that's a media and events company, and you probably know that through our properties, our media properties on the right-hand side. So anything that's related to, has the word world in it, that's related to information technology, whether it's a consumer brand like PC World or Mac World, or if it's a B2B brand like Info World, that's an IDC publication. Now, Tom did mention the Dummy's Guide to Introducing a Speaker. That's actually a line that IDC created when they were the Dummy's Guide to Mac, the Dummy's Guide to Windows, the Dummy's Guide to VisiCalc, and so forth. But we threw that away and sold it to somebody else. We're also a ventures company through IDG, and we fund startup companies. As a company, we were founded by Patrick McGovern, as I said, 50 years ago. Now, Pat just passed away a couple weeks ago. A real shame, just days before we were having a gala party to celebrate our 50 years. And Pat was a wonderful man and a great philanthropist who's did many great things in his life. And at IDC, we're really glad to continue what he started there, both as a great company and a company with a social cause and mission. So I'm going to do an audience poll. We've got 2 questions, okay? So it's about privacy, right? So how many, this is your, think about your customers. How many of your customers like the idea of trading privacy for personalization, allowing you to have information about them for you to make highly personalized and relevant offers to them in their lives? What's your sense of, and you can text those numbers to 37607. You can do that, can't you? The polls are coming in. These are early exit polls. We can't call the election yet. Defiance County hasn't reported. Okay, well, let's stop it there. So we have it's bifurcated. There's an anchor down at the bottom of maybe less than 40%. Oh, 61 to 80%. So there's a difference of opinion here. That's what we see. So let's go to the next question. So does your company have a formal policy for managing your customers' willingness to trade privacy for personalization. And you think of that, do you think of that trade as an asset that you have to manage because there's a risk profile with it? Not many of you have voted. Can you vote, please? Okay, well, let's stop there. That's a small poll. We've only got about 15 people, 30 people who have voted or so. But it's split. That surprises me. Okay, so there is an approach, a belief that we need to approach relevancy and privacy as a corporate risk. Okay, can we go on? So I'm going to provide some context around business trends, technology trends, and social, political, and cultural trends for the conversation we're going to have about personalization and privacy. So business trend, first of all, Terry mentioned how the Macy's spend is moving from traditional to digital, and that's following the trend here. It's moving from traditional to digital and increasingly mobile. And the intensity of the advertisement to people on their mobile phones is going to increase astronomically. So what this means to us as retailers, it's data, data, and more data. That's the first trend to look at. The second trend to look at is what we call big data and analytics. And retailers, in a poll we've just did, a survey we did, more than 50% are training their big data and analytics efforts on customer-related activities, acquisition and retention, pricing strategies and programs, and customer services and support. So data about customers related to acquiring and retaining and servicing them is very important to us. So let's move on to the context of social, cultural context, and the smartphone as a critical shopping tool. Our survey recently found that 69% of consumers think of their phone as a critical shopping tool that creates a better shopping experience. And about the same percent, 70%, think that will become an even more important tool next year than it was this past year. So mobile defines our human existence, as was said earlier today. It's how we live. I think of it as the 5I persona that has become part of our roles in all aspects of our lives because we're instrumented with the phone. We'll be instrumented soon with many other things. We're interconnected, we're informed, we're in place, and we're immediate. And these trends are even more important among younger and female shoppers. Now, we asked that question under two situations. One, with respect to using the phone anywhere as a shopping tool, and then with respect to using the smartphone in the store as a shopping tool. And what we found is that there's an immediate and visible impact of the store environment on how consumers utilize the smartphone. So this reinforces to us the importance of the store in the path to purchase. So consumers are much less likely to check reviews or to check for latest deals via apps once we're in the store, and they're slightly less inclined to check on prices. So it talks to us about the influence of the store. Okay, so phones are important. So I want to go to the next social political context, which is the notion of privacy. So can we get the every breath you take. I'll be watching you, right? We're always being watched. So 2 weeks ago in the New York, in the Wall Street Journal, in the big data section, there was this front page article. And there were some stats in there that are just astounding. I thought I'd share them with you. So Facebook can track us on just over 1,200 of the 2,100 largest or top websites. Half of them were tracked. Our activities are tracked about 2,000 times a day, on average, on mobile devices and on the web. About 700 million people worldwide are in the Axiom database. And get this one really floored me. Axiom is measuring over 3,000 shopping tendencies based on all that data they collect to utilize for whatever purposes they'd like to sell that services to retailers to do. So as consumers, most of us are growing up and understanding that this is happening. So that's the context within which we're dealing with privacy and relevancy and trying to manage and balance that trade-off. So at IDC, we do every year a set of top 10 predictions. We talk about the state of retail. And our theme for this year, 2014, is reinvention. And Dr. Hart, when she began this morning's presentation, talked about retail reconceptualizing itself. And a number of the speakers today talked about reinventing and changing and transforming themselves. And that's right in line with the predictions we made. And we believe that changing that reinvention is focused on relationships, relevance, and reciprocity. And I think we heard a lot about that today from Whole Foods and from Bert and from and Nike and Blue Nile especially, right? It's all about relationship, relevancy, and reciprocity. They don't want to sell, Harvey said at Blue Nile, they want a relationship. So I want to just quickly throw up the 10 predictions that we made, but I want to zero in on number 6, there with that little halo around it, about hyper-personalized promotions, right? And that's we predict that emerging concerns, and they're not so emerging now, of consumer privacy concerns will force 50% of early adopters to revisit their hyper-personalized promotion strategies by the end of next year. How many of you are doing what you might, trying to personalize your presentations and your offers, your communications, your emails, and your websites and landing pages to your customers? A few hands. Okay. Well, that's really important because you have to do it to be relevant, to have something more than just having the best products at the best prices, right? You got to put that into a story, into the context of your customer's life. So we asked consumers, we surveyed about 1,000 US consumers just before Christmas, but this was before the security breaches at Target and Neiman Marcus. So this data does not reflect those two events. We asked them 2 simple questions. Which is more important to you, getting a relevant offer or the consumer or the retailer respecting my privacy? And it was a 53-47 split. It's a coin toss. Now, unless you're in Las Vegas and the house just has odds like that, for the rest of us, it's a coin flip, and it's not a very good bet. Then we also asked the same consumers, do they have enough control over what a retailer can learn about them? And nearly 2/3, 62%, say, no, we don't have enough control over that. Okay, so that's a big, high-level gross cut of what we learned. And then we said, well, let's look at that against the 12 largest omnichannel retailers. And we defined omnichannel retailers as those that have stores, obviously, and we ranked the top 10 or 12 based on their presence in the Internet Retailing 500 list. We excluded Staples because it's very much a small office and home office business, so it's a slightly different critter than the rest of these retailers. And what we saw is that the disposition of consumers towards relevancy and privacy varies markedly across these 12 brands. Now, I should note that we're representing the shopper's overall disposition, not the disposition towards the named retailers. It's consumers who shop at Nordstrom or who shop at Walmart think about their privacy and relevancy concerns this way. So there's a real distinction here, can't we see, between these two types in these 2 dimensions across the 12 retailers. When I looked at it and stepped back, I thought, well, there's some trends here, and those brands whose shoppers are more interested in relevancy and less concerned about privacy risk, well, they tend to service a youth audience. They're very service-oriented, and they have high attachment and emotional products, and they tend to serve higher income constituencies and consumers. If we look at the bottom half, those who are at the other extreme, where concerns about privacy trump the desire for relevancy, we see retailers who are focused more on value, who tend to sell commodity products. They're servicing older and more modest consumers. So that begins to give some guidance to you as retailers as to how you might start thinking about your privacy and relevancy strategies in the context of the dispositions of your customers. Well, we took it a little farther. We said, well, strategy requires segmentation, right? We know all about that. So we said, well, let's segment and cluster the notion of relevancy, that is the delivery of a personalized offer that is relevant and somehow helpful to the consumer, by describing 7 or 8 different types of scenarios that might be an opportunity for you to be relevant to a consumer. And we ask consumers, how do you feel about retailers being able to use what they know about you against each of these 8 different types of ways to guide? And we came up with a 4-segment cluster. Right? I'll describe that in a second. And then we asked these same consumers, how do you feel about a retailer using the following data and information they have about you? And if you can see, this is ranges from stuff that's pretty banal, which is tracking my purchase history, what's transacted on the POS, to maybe watching my activity on that particular retailer's website, to some things that are a lot more aggressive. Maybe my travel patterns on my mobile phone, right? My use of third-party apps on my mobile phone, my YouTube activities, and my third part, and how I'm using the store, the web, and the mobile applications from a variety of different retailers. And we came up with a 3-segment cluster on that. So I want to now describe the results of that. So on the privacy dimension, we found that there are folks who are privacy spenders. They're very willing to share all dimensions of that private information with a retailer. In the middle, there are some privacy value seekers who are not so well inclined. And then at the bottom, we call them privacy hoarders, who once you get beyond tracking what they've put in their shopping basket, they're not too anxious for you to use that information, to know that information about them. So we looked at the demographics of the privacy spenders. We saw something pretty interesting. Well, they happen to be younger. That's probably intuitive. They tend to be more male. They have children under 18 in the household. And there was a clue there. We think there's a notion of reverse mentoring going on. I'm learning from my millennial children or from my younger children that it's the Instagram and so forth and the like that my daughter uses just fine to use. I might as well use it too, as I do. And these consumers are familiar with and shop at more retailers. Probably a more fickle consumer. Probably a consumer that's more discerning, has more choices. Probably a consumer that spends more and that's but more difficult to service and satisfy. Then we looked at the segmentation of these different segments, or their population, relevant size of their segments. And privacy hoarders comprise almost 50% of the consumers we surveyed. And the spenders are only about 14%. And in the middle, we've got close to 40% who are those value seekers. So if you think about the commonplace notion that consumers are very, very anxious, willing to trade privacy for relevancy, that might misguide your strategy. On the same token, then we looked at these notions of privacy against these 12 retailers. And we looked at how the segments broke out. And we saw something similar to the earlier chart I showed you, which is that these youth-oriented retailers like Forever 21, The Gap, but also Nordstrom and Victoria's Secrets that aren't youthful at all, but they're high service-oriented and develop relationships with their customers, as well as selling high attachment products like Victoria's Secrets does, have consumers who are much more akin to being privacy spenders, much more likely to be privacy spenders. So our guidance for retailers who are servicing that type of consumer, it's important to engage in digital and mobile dialogue, right? Put in through digital and mobile media, and create life dialogues in the context of those customers, and not focus on promoting the product, but promoting how that product, or describing how that product fits into their life. In the middle, the group that could go either way, keep doing some A/B testing, trying to understand where they're going, and track their dispositions over time, because they're going to flow into one of the two other segments at the top or the bottom. And finally, if you're dealing with those who are really privacy hoarders, you've always got to seek permission, right? And focus more on promoting the product rather than promoting the product as a solution to their requirements. So then we looked at relevancy, right? And we had several dimensions here of relevancy. And we asked consumers, how do you like a retailer to be relevant to you and help you and be of assistance to you as you go and shop? And we found 4 segments. What's interesting is this second data point that I drew the box around. And a lot of us are focused on recommending a product to purchase, the upsell, the next sell, the complementary product. Well, that was trumped by the fact that consumers would rather have, more consumers want you to help them get more value out of something they've already purchased from you, right? Don't tell me something more, but tell me and engage me and help me understand on how I can use this product better. It goes back to Procter & Gamble's notion of the second moment of truth. The first moment of truth is when you buy the box of Tide. The second moment of truth is when you use it and are my clothes nice and washed. Right? That's how well that's being used. And Procter & Gamble has done a tremendous amount of work along that to create communities online about how to use their products better. So we then looked at the demographics of these open guidance seekers, and we saw a similar distribution or orientation that we saw from the privacy spenders. And we inferred that their relevancy is fragile, right? Their allegiance to you as a consumer, to a retailer, is fragile. They likely have a higher recency, frequency, and monetary value as a lifetime customer value. And they're probably subject to generational influences, as I described before. Now, they're only 15% of consumers, whereas we've got about a quarter who are really closed to guidance. Again, we need to have balance between trying to be relevant and trying to protect the privacy that our consumers and shoppers have shared with us. So we got to take account of their dispositions to relevancy, right? And we had a similar distribution to we saw before. For those who are selling to, and you have as your customers, consumers who really seek guidance and want to seek your guidance to get more value out of what you're selling them and enter into a dialogue with you, take up shopper-centric marketing strategies, support those 3 moments of truth that I spoke to a minute ago, and also extend relevancy through social media, into social media activities. And if you're dealing with those who are really are not so keen on getting relevant advice and want something that sticks more to the product, take product-centric marketing strategies and support those 3 moments of truth in terms of the benefits that they deliver, not in terms of the context of the consumer's life. So I'm going to throw in a couple of videos now, okay? And it's for the new Kindle Fire. There are two versions of that, of a commercial that I'd like to show you. So let's look at the first one.
Mayday.
Thank you for pressing the Mayday button. How can I help you?
Whoa, who are you?
I'm Amy, a tech advisor for your new Kindle Fire.
I didn't realize I'd get a live person.
Yep, we're here 24/7. We can draw on your screen and even show you how to use different features.
So I can just press the Mayday button and you're here to help?
Hit Mayday and I'm coming to the rescue.
Amy, I like you.
Aw.
Introducing the revolutionary Mayday button, only on the new Kindle Fire HDX.
Short, sweet. Anybody seen that? Have we seen that? A few of us have? Okay. Well, the product has a personality, right? Amy's there and she embodies the personality about the product. But that was simply about the product, a product with personality. It really wasn't, it was how do I use the product and how might I get more value out of it. Let's look at another advertisement for the same product.
Thanks for pressing Mayday. How can I help?
Hey, my niece is coming over this weekend and I know she's gonna want to use my new Kindle Fire.
No problem. The Fire's great for kids.
But I don't want her to be glued to it the whole time.
Gotcha. Just use Kindle Free Time. It lets you set limits on how long kids can watch and play.
So it'll tell her when time's up, I don't have to?
Yep.
Cool. Because who could say no to this face?
Aw.
Introducing the revolutionary Mayday button, only on the new Kindle Fire HDX.
Okay, now what kind of person were they marketing to there? They're marketing to someone who's very willing to who's seeking guidance. Now this is public, it's on TV, it's not personalized to that individual dad or uncle. But imagine if this was in an email dialogue or on a web landing page, a property that the brand owned. And that kind of context was understood and a message like that was delivered to someone who was seeking relevancy and guidance, would land really positively and strong. But if it was someone who was a privacy hoarder and didn't really want to get guidance, probably wouldn't land so well. So it's the same product, advertised two different ways to deal with two different types of consumers and two different types of dispositions to privacy and relevancy. That's the core of the presentation. I've got one more slide that I'd like to share with you, which is summarize what I've described and provide some guidance as we go forward. So I spoke earlier pretty quickly about what we call the 3 R's of retail reinvention. It's relationship, creating relationships with your customers, being relevant in their lives, and creating some medium of exchange that's defining where there's equal reciprocity, and that the value of that is in the context of consumers' lives. So reinventing yourselves to manage the 4 R's of the new retail. Some points of guidance here. There are concerns about using behavioral and hyper-personalized information. The common wisdom may mislead you, so don't bank your marketing and customer relationship strategies on a simple notion that people are willing. Understand that some do and some don't. Manage your privacy, your consumers' confidence in your ability to manage their private information as an asset that could be at risk and that has brand risk. And also apply privacy and relevancy profile segments to all aspects of the way you relate with customers, whether it's in marketing, store operations, your website, your mobile properties. Those are my thoughts that I wanted to share with you today, and I'm happy to take any questions. Got a question here?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
You talk about common wisdom, like common sense really isn't that common. But my question is, with all the great research and data, what was the biggest surprise to you?
That's a great question. The biggest surprise was how quickly the an inclination to how quickly it how narrow that large segment of consumers that they only wanted the retailer, us, to know about their shopping pattern, that it was really that narrow, right? That was a surprise, right? The other surprise was just how small that segment of consumers that's the privacy spender and the relevancy seeker, like 14 or 15%, that it was that small. I think those are the two things that surprised me most.
And do you think if you did the survey 2 years from now, those percentages would change?
That's a great question. Other data that I've not shared with you today can draw the conclusion that the good news is that in general we trust, right? We do trust in God, but and more and more we trust in online Google and other folks who we interact with online. The bad news there is that if we look at the top 20 things that we trust in, retailers tend to be, the major retail brands fall towards like 15 to 20, right? We're not very high up in that trust list. So it is possible to gain trust, and I think it will improve. But only if we manage this balancing act adroitly. Yes?
Right. The
James?
choice of words, hyper-personalization, seems to carry a little bit of a value with it. We don't hear the hyper part very often in these conversations. Does that suggest that there is such a thing as overdoing it? Are there some warning signs we should watch out for? Where's the state of wisdom in understanding just how personalized to get?
Yeah. So I was having a conversation with two senior executives from Tesco at an event late last fall, and they talked about one of the services that Tesco's rolled out is that they can recommend, if you're a Tesco loyalty card holder, they can recommend to a friend of yours a product based on your purchase pattern, right? What would Jim like to buy, right? And does everybody want everybody to know what they buy at Tesco? I'm not sure, right? And maybe someone who's going to ping me and use that information and poke around for seeking to buy me a gift wants to infer something else out about me, right? So I'm not sure. I think that might be a hyper-personalized approach, right? Although you can opt into it or opt out of it. So there's some safeguard there.
Just quickly, do you have anything post? In December, we had a whole drum roll starting with Target of data breaches.
Yeah.
Do you have any post-December?
No, I don't.
Okay.
No. Good question, no. Yeah. But, I wasn't so concerned. My focus wasn't about credit risk and credit card privacy. It was of a different nature. Well, I guess that's it. Okay. Now I think we're going to hear from a musician, if I understand correctly. All right. Thank you very much.